Welcome to another broadcast of Global TV, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
Hi, it's Ed Cohen in San Diego, California. It's a little past 8 in the morning here, and the sun is shining. We have a Santa Ana hot wind condition. Yesterday it was over 90 here in the Seaport Village, San Diego. Very unusual. And frankly, I'm sick of it. So I wish it would cool off. So special guest today, Renee Stegman, who's co-founder and CEO of Relocation Africa, relocationafrica.com. And also online is John Schuldt in New York. He's a longtime executive with the international automobile industry. So let's welcome Renee and John. Hi, Renee.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, welcome and good evening to you. It's almost dinner time there, I guess, right? Yeah, so you're in Cape Town.
It's Friday.
Yeah,
Yes.
Friday night. Thank God. So, so what time do you usually eat dinner on Friday nights?
Well, it's because it's summer here and we're having a beautiful summer's day. We'll have what we call a braai, what most of you call a barbecue. And we'll probably very relaxed, having a sort of sundowner and wine are more important than when we eat. So we eat at some time tonight.
Oh, nice. That's great. And so what would be the high temperature, or what was the high temperature today?
27 degrees Celsius.
So what's that, about 85? Something like that? Yeah, about that. Yeah, cool. John, so what's going on in New York? Are you healthy and safe?
Healthy and safe. It's a very cool, damp, rainy fall morning here. Temperature's only about 60 degrees. And so you need to relocate to New York from San Diego.
No, I grew up in Boston and I hated the weather. I couldn't wait to leave. So came to LA in 1980 and I'm not going anywhere. So maybe Hawaii, but that's it. So as a matter of fact, Joanne and I are ticketed to go to Maui about a month from now. They're just opening it up for tourism. So we have to get the COVID test just before we get on the plane, but we'll see what happens between now and then. It's been closed. The economy there has been crushed. So we're going to go help it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Right. So let's get into some detail here about business. Before we get into that, actually, as part of business, yesterday, Joanne and I drove 3.5 hours from Big Bear Mountain, where we have mountain home, to come back into San Diego. And we got stuck in rush hour traffic. And I have to tell you that we haven't seen it like this in 8 or 9 months. So there's no recession here. It is absolutely red hot. Not just the weather, but the economy is just busting, which is cool. It's about time. And across the street from us, I'm looking out the window there, the Hyatt Regency. We're in Seaport Village, which is a tourist and convention area. It's been a ghost town for months, but the hotels are filling up. The lights were on last night. So I think things are going to be okay, hopefully. Yeah. So Renee, tell us about Relocation Africa today. I understand was founded by your mother. Is that correct?
Yes, it was founded by my mother. Quite a story, but she relocated herself and myself and my sister from Zimbabwe to South Africa, and then started helping a whole lot of friends who obviously needed to navigate South Africa, and obviously very informally and not part of a company at that stage. And then in '93, she actually incorporated Relocation Africa, and so she started it 27 odd years ago, and very soon after starting it got her first client, which was United Healthcare and Southern Health, which is a South African health company, did a joint venture and they brought over 20 families. So that was her first big project. So it was very exciting.
So, and how old were you at that time?
Then I was probably 21, 22. Actually, yeah, about that. And she convinced me to write the business plan, which I did. And I basically, in a shorter story, I landed up joining her. She actually only stayed in the business 2 years till after that, and then left me as a 23, 4-year-old running this business. So it was interesting. In the beginning, I can say it certainly wasn't my career path I had imagined for myself.
Yeah.
But
So, I mean, just looking back before we get into today, but it's all great info, frankly. So I hope you don't mind talking about it a little bit. Back then, did you get people in a car and drag them around to different properties? Was that the nature of your business?
Very much all inbound South Africa, pure destination services as we know them today. And in fact, it was so new. I mean, I remember talking to corporations about relocation services. They didn't even know what the word relocation meant. So it was quite foreign to them. And actually, even the sort of protocols around these allowances for expats was so unknown that they were giving, the expat, both spouse and husband could buy cars. We took them on shopping trips. It was like extravagance extraordinaire. So obviously, as policies developed and, budgets became more of a pragmatic approach, companies obviously have reduced the amount of support they give, families. But it was purely inbound to South Africa in the beginning, and that kept us busy for a while. And then a lot of our clients required services outside of South African borders. So we slowly started expanding both our service offering. So we do immigration as well and other services, and Nigeria, Kenya. We actually service right up to Tunisia, right up to the north of Africa now.
So before we move on, that's a beautiful dress that you have on, or a blouse. Was that made locally?
So it's actually not. It's actually on a trip I went to Australia last year, and it's an Australian dress. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it looks great. Okay, so were there other women-owned businesses at the time, way back then?
Actually, we did have another business similar to ours who was woman-owned, yeah. And my mom was very much an entrepreneur, but very much in her day, so a couple of years before that, she was one of the sort of liars and was a woman in high positions in some of the businesses she was with before. So it was not common, but in this industry, the other business was also woman-owned.
At the time, going back then, and then we'll move on, did you have much convincing to do to the, I'm sure it was all male, Chamber of Commerce, and about the economic impact of relocation if it's done right? The ability for companies to recruit people and get them settled because they're going to be spending money throughout the community. It's all about economic development.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I think, we've had a lot of, we have really good agencies in terms of investment agencies encouraging investment into the countries all over Africa. We try to sit very much alongside them to support, the businesses making these investments because, I mean, often governments are a bit slow to react to business needs. So we try and be there, but the government departments and the investment agencies don't really like aligning with private sectors. Hopefully with COVID, that's going to change and there'll be a bigger mindset about collaborating, because that's actually the only way we're going to recover, all of us around the world, to collaborate, both private individuals, the public sector, government sector, as well as the private sector and business. So we're trying to do more working collaboratively now, but only more recently. But before, unfortunately, very much a hand's distance. They don't want to be seen supporting any one particular private business, which is, I guess, understandable. But the government agencies are pretty well established, just very slow to react to some of the. In fact, I've got a company investing into Zimbabwe at the moment. I sent out an email a week ago, and I've had no response for a potential investor into Zimbabwe. So it's very sad. But anyway, that's why I guess private sector, is there to be able to pick up the loose ends, hopefully.
So in terms of distances, I'm ignorant, and probably some of our audience out there is not knowledgeable also about distances in South Africa, Zimbabwe. What are we talking about distance?
Well, for me to get from Cape Town to Johannesburg, so that's both within South Africa, it's a 2-hour flight, 12 hours drive, just to give you an indication. To get into Zimbabwe, so Zimbabwe does border with South Africa. It's an additional 8 hours to get to the capital, Harare, about maybe 6, to get from Johannesburg up into Harare. So the distance is, I'm not sure if that's large, but it's fairly long. You can't get to Johannesburg quickly from Cape Town other than by flying.
Yeah, and generally speaking, and forgive me, but again, I'm ignorant about this because it's all new to me, and I haven't done a lot of homework. So I need to ask, is it safe for you as a lady to drive from Cape Town to Johannesburg, never mind up to Harare?
So on my own, I would say it is relatively safe. I wouldn't probably do it on my own, if I didn't have to. It comes more to around breaking down, and I can change a tire on my own in case anyone thinks I can't, because my father trained me very young. But it's more around just being stuck on the side of the road. You obviously more susceptible to problems as a female. So that would be my only concern. For everything else, it would be pretty safe to drive anywhere. I would drive up to a 6-hour drive up to a holiday place on the coast on my own, but a longer sort of drive requiring an overnight stay is a long time to go on a car on my own.
So Zimbabwe used to be Rhodesia, which was a really rich natural resources area. It still is, isn't it?
Zimbabwe is my country of birth, actually, and it's very sad. It has I would say it's, other than Cape Town, Zimbabwe is one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and it has a large amount of wild animals and natural resources, lots of mining up there. But sadly, going back to Harare, which we did about 2-3 years ago, we go into the bush every year. Harare is still in the 1970s. It hasn't changed at all. There's not many high-rise buildings. It's really not modernized at all. So it is quite sad, but a beautiful place to visit from a tourism perspective, mainly.
Very interesting stuff. Thank you for sharing that. Now, we're going to zero in on today in just a few minutes. Let's go to John. So Renee, John's background for many years as Ford Motor Company exec, and was involved as a leader of chambers of commerce and business associations in Asia. John, why don't you do a little deeper than I just did?
Sure, Ed, thanks. Renee, that was really interesting. I worked for Ford Motor Company for 31 years, and as you well know, we have a large presence in South Africa.
Okay.
It was one of those places that I had hoped to go in my career, but unfortunately never made it there. I worked for Ford Motor Company in Japan, and then also Ford used to own a company called Mazda, a Japanese automobile manufacturer, and I worked for Mazda in Japan, and then I finished my career with Ford in South Korea, with Ford Motor Company South Korea. So I did 3 international relocations in my career and many domestic relocations within the United States. So presently, I'm the Director of Global Business Development for a company called International Auto Source, and we assist expats who move to the United States or move to another country with the purchase of a new vehicle. And if you today were to be moving to the United States, you could walk into a Ford dealership, for example, and say, I'd like to purchase a new vehicle. I need a new vehicle. And the dealer would look at your background and see that you don't have a US credit history and you don't have an identification number or social security number. And the dealer would say, fine, write me a check for $40,000 and I'll give you the car. What we do is provide financing for those expats that move. And it becomes a better way for them to manage their cash flow, especially as the mobility industry is moving to lump sum relocation payments, as opposed to the traditional expatriate assignment that you described earlier to Ed, and the experience that I had when I moved to Japan and to South Korea. So that's kind of what I do today. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about the relocation industry in South Africa and the relocation industry in Africa, and what you can share with the audience.
Well, thanks, John. Paul, let's run the commercials, just about 2.5, 3 minutes, and it'll be really quick. But just to show you how we're using video to, of course, generate some revenue for ourselves and pay some bills, but also it's all tied into the world of talent management, whether it's virtual or real. Okay, Paul.
One of the greatest things about attending the Bridge School is that students are able to truly move at their own pace. Students who are advanced learners can move more quickly through the curriculum. Students who are struggling can slow down and take a little bit more time and get additional resources from their teachers. Also, the typical school in a school district is following state set guidelines and standards, and they're following the pace of the entire class. And that isn't always conducive to students. The Bridge School partners with Strong Mind to provide this award-winning curriculum. And with that, students are able to trust and know that they're learning a curriculum that is built on standards that are national standards, that are research-based, and they're chronological based on how students learn. So students can actually go forward and learn that at their own pace and not have to worry if they are meeting the standards that are set forth by the state. They can know that they're learning what needs to be mastered in that course to be successful.
This episode of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice at bridge12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Find them at porchlightrental.com.
CubeMonk, featuring the world's first smart cube. Welcome to the future of moving and relocation at cubemonk.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by Airs. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at airs.com. And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles. On the web at intlauto.com.
As an expat moving to the USA, relocating is exciting, but it can also be stressful. Getting a car, truck, or SUV for personal transportation is usually a high priority. That's where International Auto Source comes in. We make getting the vehicle you want for your work assignment or academic program easy, so you're ready to drive when you arrive. Our product specialists have helped over 50,000 expatriates with their personal transportation needs, making us the largest international auto retailer in the world. International Auto Source gives you flexible payment options to buy, lease, or rent a vehicle from the world's leading auto brands, arrange financing on a purchase or lease without a U.S. credit history, social security number, or driving record, get full insurance coverage, and get approved easily through our low-rate factory-backed financing programs. And because we're an authorized distributor of the world's leading automotive brands, our no-haggle prices are competitive, and the buying experience is hassle-free. We'll even guarantee your new vehicle will be ready the day you arrive. With over 20 years of experience in the global community, we are the vehicle experts for expats. We are International Auto Source.
So we've been blessed to have some support build and enable us to double down and, in fact, triple down. So the Bridge School, you saw that, very interesting. There's a whole series of videos that I'll be running, not today, but going forward. And we're doing a 15 program, 15, starting, I think it's next week or the week after, on Thursdays, not every Thursday, but all the way through March, the end of March. And that we're going to be featuring different aspects of not only the Bridge School, but some other schools, part of that group. It's a venture capital-based group. And I was introduced to them about 3 or 4 months ago, and they've been testing us. And then they decided to invest. So, hey, happy, of course. But the education series is going to be, of course, part of our library. And I'd like to introduce you, Renee, to Julie and the partners. So maybe you could tell them at your own time, another place, about online schooling, private schooling in Africa. But my job is to bring people together, and this is why I'm talking about this. So, John, that's a great commercial. So I really liked how it showed a diversity of people in it, and a young lady's voice and imagery, not just old white guys like us. So.
Yeah, so we wanted to portray or get across that we are very customer focused. We have 50,000 satisfied customers around the globe. We operate with our rental program called Ready Drive. We operate in over 150 countries around the world. We just yesterday signed an agreement to start operations in Australia. And we're certainly interested in Africa as well. And that's why we're happy to be part of this broadcast today to hear more from Renee about the relocation industry in South Africa.
So let's dig deep into relocation, say Nairobi. I mean, this is not rehearsed, I know, but Nairobi is very different than Casablanca and way different than Cairo, not to mention Madagascar. I mean, you know, who knows about all this? You knew. So, so you have a home finding company now called Residence, is that correct?
My Residence, yes.
Yeah.
It's a sister company, yeah, and it does temporary living. So, you know, on the continent, you know, it's actually incredible that I think a lot of, and being with the Ford Motor Company, you might, you know, sort of get this or understand what I'm trying to say, but, you know, a lot of companies want a global provider to provide, you know, a solution throughout the world. The one thing is, and I mean, I travel a lot and I've been to many conferences to understand why you can almost sort of group the world together, but there are some areas which are more challenging and very different in terms of how things operate. And Africa is definitely one of those. So from a temporary living perspective, there's nobody else on the continent offering, you know, a diverse opportunity to be on the ground and developing these property opportunities. So if you want to get temporary living opportunities in all those cities you just mentioned, Ed, you know, you would have to phone 100 different people to get your answers and find reliable companies to respond back to you in, you know, the Western style, which is in a sort of 24-hour minimum period. So we developed the idea and the concept about having and building my residence through the continent of Africa and building these property portfolios, building relationships with the property managers and owners, and you know, getting them aligned from a protocol and process and compliance perspective, so that, you know, when someone from the West phones, you know, us and wants a property in Casablanca tomorrow morning, we'll offer it. And so it's been a really good business to start. And I think what the companies like that we're dealing with is the fact that we have agents on the ground to vet those properties, you know, so it's not just booking some random property on the internet that looks okay. It's really knowing that a company has taken a vested interest in the security, the compliance aspects of these properties that we have in our portfolio. So yes, it's been great. It's a new business, so it's only 2 years old, but we are doing pretty well considering, you know, COVID. So
Yeah.
yes.
So about Nairobi, it's a big city, right?
Big city.
Yeah.
Yep, Nairobi's a big city, and, you know, like any African city, it's, you know, complex, and it's, you know, even though we cover many cities across the African continent, they're all very different, have what I would say unique personalities of their own, and unique, you know, differentiators. So often when someone says to us, you know, well, what's property like, you know, in various countries, it's so different. So we, as Relocation Africa, put some webinars together to try and educate our clients about these differences in terms of understanding housing markets and, you know, driving in those countries, or the language or the culture. So every single one of them are completely different, and you can't definitely put any of them into a similar basket to anyone else. They're all very, very different, culturally, from a language base, from protocols, the way they operate. So it is very interesting and colorful. So working on the continent certainly doesn't provide for any dull day in my work day.
So when's the last time you were in Rwanda?
Funnily enough, Rwanda, I've never been to, but one of our very good friends, we just relocated there. Rwanda is an incredible country. So obviously, well, not obviously, but because of the genocide, a lot of government, the world supported Rwanda, and a lot of money was given to the government. And so it's got a very robust infrastructure in terms of roads, you know, telecommunications and various things. So it's primed and ready to be, I would say, probably one of the best countries in Africa in terms of the sort of possibilities, because infrastructure often is a deterring factor when investing into a country. So Rwanda is certainly well placed. And a lot of sort of the World Bank, IMF, you know, world funders are also, you know, there and present in terms of helping out, you know, Africa and uplifting Africa as such.
So I have a friend by the name of Jeremy who relocated from Houston to Rwanda because of a relationship, and he's been there a couple of years. And he works from home, work from anywhere. So anyway, Jeremy is a Brit, and he graduated from Oxford University, and wound up in Houston with the oil industry for a while, and then relocated to Rwanda about a year and a half ago. So he and I did a talk show, one of the first ones last March. And we're not showing it because it went on and on and on and on. This was before I knew how to shut up. And so, but someday we'll edit that. But I want to So I want to make an introduction eventually to him, because he's very much into that area. And, you know, he told me, and much to my surprise, that the climate in Nagani, or I can't remember the exact name of the major city. They're at like
Kigali.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to remember all these cities, and yes, Kigali.
Yeah, and so I said, well, it's right near the equator, isn't it? So isn't it really hot? How's your air conditioning bill? He says, well, we hardly ever use it because we're up high. It's high elevation, and he says it's just a beautiful climate. It's probably like San Diego.
Amazing, amazing, amazing.
Now, who would think that, right?
We should interview him and my friends who've just relocated there and do a Rwanda, what it's like relocating to Rwanda.
Yeah, so apparently there's beautiful lakes that are clean, and you know, national parks, and it's apparently pretty close to Uganda, which is sort of to the right, I guess, over there.
Gorillas. Yeah, everyone knows Rwanda and Uganda actually for the gorillas. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're friendly. No, I don't know.
Well, I guess no, I wouldn't try anything strange with them, to be honest. They're big.
Yeah. So have you been to the Aswan Dam?
Aswan Dam, where's that?
Yeah, well, it's somewhere along the Nile. You know, a big electrical power dam. South Sudan, I think it is.
Sudan.
Yeah.
In Sudan. No, I haven't. I've traveled a lot of Africa, but there's a lot of Africa I haven't traveled. So, yeah.
So have you ever been in a mine, down in a mine?
I have. My grandfather was in the mine in Zimbabwe, actually. So I had a grandfather who was a miner. But I've been down once. That was enough.
I bet. Yeah. Okay, so have you been to Madagascar?
I haven't been.
Oh, Egypt.
I'm in Egypt. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. See, this is great having you on the show.
We're learning. Have I been to Madagascar? No, I haven't. I've been to a number of other islands, but not to Madagascar. No.
Yeah, and I understand Tanzania is a beautiful place.
Yes, Tanzania is lovely. Also, again, in all of these African countries, it depends where you go, right? Because you can go on safari and have a great experience. You know, in outside, Dar es Salaam, there's various beautiful islands like Pemba and Zanzibar. Been to both of those, lovely. So it does depend where you go and your experience in any of these African countries. But yeah, I mean, you know, Africa is wild, but it's beautiful. As an expat, you know, I think a lot of expats I've spoken to, you know, never really forget the experience in Africa, because either that it was traumatic and, you know, left an indelible mark, or it was just, you know, such an experience that they've never been able to replicate. And so they remember it, you know, generally as a very memorable experience.
So I'm sure you've been to Angola.
Yes, I've been to Angola.
Yeah, so that seems to be a hub of expat, or has been anyway, a lot of expats.
Yes, a lot of expats. Yeah, I mean, you know, relocating expats into Angola is very tough. Traffic, you know, to go and see one property, 2 to 3 hours traffic, you know, it's unbelievable. Nigeria can be the same, actually. You can actually video, there's some amazing YouTube video clips, just, you know, traffic in Nigeria. And I mean, it's just mind-boggling. So you really, you know, when relocation management companies give you sort of a one-day house hunting trip for an assignee, you're like, it's 2 houses maybe, if you're lucky, you know, and they don't understand it. It's really, you know, impractical. So we actually don't sell, other than South Africa, a one-day home trip anywhere else on the continent of Africa. It is impossible to have a good outcome. So yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So John, when you were in Japan, you had a lot of experience with expats, never mind yourself.
Yes, yeah, I did. And it's interesting to listen to Renee and her description of the house hunting trip, because when you do relocate from your home country, number one on your mind is a home for you and your family. Number two is usually schooling, if you have school-age kids. If you don't have school-age kids, then it's how am I going to get around? What's the transportation infrastructure? Do I need a vehicle? But relocating to a city like Tokyo, Renee, you were talking about distance. From Tokyo to Yokohama is about 40 miles in total. And there's 35 million people that live within that space. So trying to visit properties especially in an automobile, becomes very time consuming. So I actually was fortunate enough, we had 5 business days in Tokyo to find a place. And so the destination service provider that we used would take us around to 2 or 3 properties each day. But by the end of that business week, we had to make a decision about where we wanted to live. So it's very interesting to hear you talk about Nairobi, and I certainly understand when you say that relocation management companies struggle to understand the traffic and understand how difficult it is. Why can't they see 4 or 5 properties in one day? Well, the traffic makes it impossible to do that. So it's interesting to hear you say that.
Mm. And actually, just thinking about cars, in most of the African countries, our transport system or public transport system for an expat is not something we really would sort of show them, because everyone in most of the African countries we deal with, would have their own car. So, it's those kind of sort of educational processes that we land up talking to the clients about. It's different, and it's not bad different, it's just different. So just understanding those nuances, when you're sending people to one of our locations, I think, important to understand, those differences.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Well, I'm just in awe. I'm learning so much here. So, so I've seen some posts by your immigration leader. So things are changing. There's new rules happening because of COVID, at the same time opening up.
Yes. So obviously all the countries are quite different. I would strongly recommend anyone want to know more about Africa and what's happening is to follow us on LinkedIn, because we do try and post updates in terms of openings and closing and immigration updates for the continent of Africa, as well as new legislation. So yes, our president for South Africa particularly announced a possible e-visa for tourism, which is going to be incredible, as well as some what they call sort of highly skilled visas, which are some regulations are changing. So I just think, it's really good for us all to have our governments align with business in terms of understanding, foreign direct investment is still very important for our countries. We need tourism, we need, we need skills to come in, because, certainly not being excluded from the rest of the world, but Africa certainly doesn't have the skill set that the rest of the world has. So we certainly need to still import skill sets and have those skills transferred. So yes, visa and immigration is adjusting slowly. There's also potentially, the African Free Trade Agreement, as well as sort of around that will be some visa-free kind of travel for those amongst the continent of Africa, which is quite new and exciting if it all comes off. Obviously, there's a couple of sticking points, as there always are when you're trying to build a road through a new residential area. There's always a couple who don't want to bash their house down. So yeah, there's a couple of African states that haven't necessarily signed or come on board. So, but it is exciting when governments align.
Wow, that's cool. Very cool. So John, you did some work in Seoul and Taiwan and Vietnam, right?
Never worked in Taiwan or Vietnam. I did travel to Vietnam particularly, but when I worked in Seoul, I worked for Ford Motor Company, and I retired from Ford Motor Company, and I became the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Korea. And I ran AmCham for a couple of years in Seoul. So listening to Renee talk about free trade agreements is very interesting to me, because during my time as president of AmCham Korea, that was when the Korea-US Free Trade Agreement was implemented in full force between both countries. And it really did enhance the trade between Korea and the United States. So it's good to hear, Renee, that there's discussions about free trade agreements in Africa, because they do work.
Yeah, no, it's encouraging, and there's a lot more. I mean, you know, when they start discussing sort of localization and regionalization, I guess, in terms of supporting the economies, it doesn't prohibit global, you know, trade at all. But I think what you know, and I'll give you an example. Recently, B4SA is a sort of consortium who's got together and try to assist local manufacturers in South Africa produce PPE as opposed to importing PPE, which there is very, you know, clever, because it's helping our manufacturers upskill and generate income. But we also have technical skills and machinery that we needed to import in order to make that happen. So it doesn't preclude globalization or global trade. It just is trying to focus on making sure we're able to generate and sustain our own economies, I guess.
Fascinating. Well, I thank you very much for being our guest today, and happy hour is on you, and so we're going to hang up, and I'm going to have some eggs and toast. So, John, where are you going to go for lunch today?
I'm going to go to my kitchen table for lunch today.
Okay. Nice.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. So, Renee, you want to exchange your email or website, relocationafrica.com, I guess, right?
Do you want me to put it up in the chat, or?
Yeah, why not? And John, if you want to put your details in there too. My job is to bring people together and make friends. So I thank you for doing this. I welcome you to consider doing more.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Renee. Thanks,
Thank you, John. All right, ciao.
Thank you for joining us for today's Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.